It was a bright, crisp morning in the city, the kind of day where everything feels possible, and yet inside one of the tallest glass skyscrapers downtown, tension hummed in the air. The boardroom on the top floor overlooked the bustling streets below, and the sunlight streamed in, glinting off the polished mahogany table where the city's top executives were gathered. The walls were lined with expensive paintings and the subtle smell of fresh coffee lingered in the air, a reminder of the countless meetings that had taken place here. Everyone in the room had dressed carefully for the occasion, suits pressed, ties straight, shoes polished, but no matter how prepared they felt, something unusual was about to disrupt their routine. At the head of the table sat a millionaire, a man known for his sharp mind and sharper tongue. He had built his fortune from the ground up, and today, he carried the confidence of someone used to being respected, feared, and, at times, envied. He leaned back in his chair, scanning the room with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. His eyes settled on a young boy who had just walked through the glass doors. The boy couldn't have been more than 12 or 13 years old. His clothes were simple but neat, a crisp white shirt tucked into dark trousers, shoes shining under the fluorescent lights. He carried a small notebook and a confident stride that immediately made some of the executives exchange puzzled glances. The millionaire smirked. He was used to leading adults who had years of experience, people who had climbed the corporate ladder and understood the unspoken rules of power. A boy? This was unusual, even absurd, and he allowed himself a quiet chuckle. Whispers rippled through the room. Some executives nudged each other, eyebrows raised, clearly wondering why someone so young was even here. It was not every day that a child entered the inner sanctum of corporate authority, let alone with the air of someone who belonged there. But the boy didn't flinch. He walked to the front of the room with calm assurance, his steps deliberate and measured. The executives' curiosity grew, some were skeptical, others openly amused. He opened his notebook, took a deep breath, and glanced around the room. There was no hint of nervousness, no sign that he was intimidated by the millionaire or the serious faces around the table. Everyone had expected hesitance, stammering, maybe even a shy apology for being out of place. Instead, they found a presence that demanded attention. The millionaire leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued, though skepticism still lingered in his expression. He had seen many presentations, many people claim authority, but the aura around this boy was different. There was something in his eyes, determination, intelligence, and a sense of purpose that couldn't be ignored. He reminded the executives of someone who had seen more than his years would suggest, someone who wasn't here to be entertained or patronized but to participate in the decision-making of people much older and more experienced. As the boy set his notebook down on the table, the room fell quiet. The faint ticking of the clock seemed louder, marking each second of anticipation. People leaned forward slightly in their chairs, not wanting to miss a single moment. This was not going to be an ordinary meeting, everyone could feel that. Even the air seemed charged, as if the building itself was holding its breath. The boy glanced at the millionaire and, with a calm, unwavering voice, said words that would soon reverberate far beyond the walls of the boardroom, "I'm your supervisor." Laughter erupted from one corner of the room. Some executives chuckled nervously, unsure if this was a joke, while the millionaire couldn't help but let out a sharp, mocking laugh. The idea of a child claiming authority over a seasoned business leader was almost comical, even insulting, in his eyes. The boy's small stature, youthful features, and the audacity of his words seemed absurd at first glance. Yet, beneath that laughter, there was a stirring curiosity, a question forming in everyone's minds: could this boy really mean what he said? Despite the initial mockery, the boy remained composed. He did not shrink back, did not apologize, and did not waver. His posture was confident, and his eyes held a clarity and intelligence that made it impossible to dismiss him entirely. The room was suddenly aware that something unusual was happening. This was no ordinary child, and this was no ordinary meeting. The millionaire, usually quick to dismiss, found himself observing the boy more closely, realizing that his confidence was not a mask or a mistake. There was a story here, a reason this young person was standing before them, speaking words that no one expected. The executives exchanged glances, some still skeptical, some intrigued. The quiet murmur of curiosity began to replace the initial laughter. Something about the boy's presence demanded that he be taken seriously, even if only for a moment. The millionaire adjusted in his chair, his smirk fading slightly, sensing that the usual power dynamics were about to shift. The stage was set for an extraordinary story to unfold, one that would challenge assumptions, disrupt expectations, and ultimately redefine what it meant to hold authority in a world where age, appearance, and background often overshadowed true ability. The room was still buzzing from the boy's unexpected presence, and whispers barely faded when he took a slow, deliberate step forward, his small hands resting lightly on the polished table. Every eye in the boardroom followed him, some with curiosity, others with disbelief. The millionaire, still smirking, leaned back in his chair, clearly enjoying the absurdity of the situation, expecting a child to stumble, to hesitate, to apologize, but the boy had none of that in him. His gaze swept across the faces around the table, calm and unwavering, as if he had rehearsed this moment for years, though in reality, he had prepared not for performance, but for proof. Then he spoke, his voice steady and surprisingly clear. "I'm your supervisor." The words hung in the air, crisp and confident, echoing off the walls of the room. The millionaire's laughter stopped mid-chuckle, replaced by a sudden pause, the kind that comes when someone realizes they might have underestimated a situation. Some executives tried to hide their shock behind polite smiles, while others leaned forward, sensing that something unusual was unfolding. It was not just the words themselves that stunned everyone, but the certainty with which they were spoken. The boy's tone carried a weight far beyond his years. The millionaire tried to recover quickly, leaning forward, his eyebrows raised in mockery. "Supervisor? You're a child," he said, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Do you even understand the responsibilities you're talking about?" Some in the room chuckled nervously, unsure whether to support the millionaire or wait and see what would happen. The boy, however, did not flinch, his expression remaining calm, his eyes steady. "Yes," he replied simply, "I understand everything, and I am responsible for the projects assigned to me." A ripple of tension spread through the room. The executives exchanged glances, realizing this was not a simple claim or a joke. The boy continued, explaining in concise, clear terms the projects he oversaw, the teams he managed, and the decisions he had already implemented. His voice never wavered, and with each word, the initial laughter in the room began to fade, replaced by a mixture of curiosity, disbelief, and cautious respect. Even the millionaire, who was used to controlling every conversation, felt a twinge of uncertainty. As the boy outlined his responsibilities, it became clear that he was speaking with authority, precision, and knowledge far beyond what anyone expected from someone his age. He spoke of budgets, timelines, and strategies, referencing documents and reports that were already on the table. His understanding was deep, his confidence genuine, and every detail he shared demonstrated that he had earned the title he boldly claimed. The millionaire shifted in his seat, trying to mask his growing unease. He had dealt with difficult executives before, people who challenged him and questioned his authority, but this was different. This was not arrogance or rebellion, it was preparation, intelligence, and an unwavering belief in oneself. The room seemed to hold its breath, everyone sensing the shift. The power dynamics were changing, and it was the boy, not the millionaire, who commanded the attention now. Some executives whispered quietly, trying to convince themselves it was still a trick, a mistake, something that would be explained away, but the boy's calm demeanor, his clear understanding, and his ability to answer every question without hesitation began to break down the walls of doubt. He was no longer a child in the eyes of the room. He was a leader, a young mind proving that age did not determine authority. By the time he finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room had completely changed. The laughter and mockery had vanished, replaced by quiet awe and thoughtful nods. The millionaire, once confident in his ridicule, now sat back, a flicker of respect, and perhaps a little fear, crossing his face. He had been confronted with someone who could not be dismissed, someone who commanded authority simply by knowing exactly who he was and what he could do. The boy closed his notebook gently, a subtle smile playing on his lips, as if to say, the proof was done. The room remained silent for a moment, everyone processing what had just happened, and then the questions began. The discussion started, but now the tone was different, respectful, serious, and attentive. the bold declaration of, "I'm your supervisor," was no longer a joke or a shock. It had become a turning point. A moment that would be remembered by everyone in the room for years to come. The moment the boy declared, "I'm your supervisor," a wave of laughter rolled through the room, sharp and mocking. The millionaire, seated at the head of the table, let out a deep, sarcastic chuckle, clearly amused at what he thought was a child playing at being a grown-up. Some executives covered their mouths with their hands, uncertain whether to join in the laughter or remain silent. The tension that had been building just moments before now exploded into mockery, and for a moment, it seemed as if the boy's confidence would be crushed under the weight of ridicule. "Supervisor," the millionaire repeated, leaning back with exaggerated disbelief, "do you even know what that means? Do you understand the responsibilities, the decisions, the consequences?" His tone was mocking, condescending, designed to embarrass and belittle. The boy looked at him steadily, his eyes calm, his posture unshaken, as if he had anticipated this reaction and had prepared for it. The room, however, could not hide its amusement, and a few executives exchanged smirks, whispering comments that they thought only each other could hear. One executive, trying to join in the jest, said quietly, "Maybe he's playing a trick on us, or maybe this is some kind of prank from the parents." Laughter rippled again, but the boy did not flinch. He opened his notebook, pointed to charts and schedules, and began explaining, line by line, the projects he was responsible for, the deadlines he managed, and the teams he supervised. His words were clear, concise, and confident, and each fact slowly cut through the mockery that filled the room. The millionaire's smirk began to falter slightly as he listened, though he tried to mask it with humor. "Well, this is new," he muttered under his breath. "I've dealt with ambitious adults, but a child taking charge. This is ridiculous." Some of the younger executives tried to laugh along, not wanting to appear naive, but the boy's calm authority made it increasingly difficult to dismiss him. His knowledge of procedures, his clarity of thought, and his ability to answer every question without hesitation were unsettling. For every joke or sarcastic comment thrown his way, the boy responded with quiet precision, never raising his voice, never showing anger. His poise was remarkable, almost disarming, and gradually, the atmosphere in the room began to shift. The laughter, once so dominant, started to fade, replaced by curiosity, then cautious respect, and some executives began whispering to each other, "This kid, he really knows what he's talking about." The millionaire tried one last time to regain control, leaning forward and raising his voice slightly. "I don't care what charts or schedules you show me, you're a child. You can't possibly be in charge here." The boy looked directly at him, his voice calm but firm. "I am in charge of these projects, and I have already made decisions that impact the team's performance. I am responsible, and I am ready." A hush fell over the room, and even the executives who had been laughing nervously before stopped, sensing that something extraordinary was unfolding. The millionaire, for the first time, hesitated, his words caught in his throat. The boy's composure, his clarity, and his undeniable preparation had created a moment where mockery no longer seemed appropriate. It was as if the room collectively realized that they were witnessing not just a bold statement, but the proof of competence, determination, and confidence beyond his years. Some executives began to nod slightly, almost imperceptibly, acknowledging the boy's points without saying a word. The mockery that had filled the room in the first moments of his declaration was now replaced with a growing sense of awareness, that this young person was not only speaking the truth but commanding authority in a way that could not be ignored. The millionaire, though still proud and defiant, began to recognize the shift, the power dynamics quietly tilting. By the end of the meeting segment, the boy had not only survived the initial ridicule but had begun to dismantle it, piece by piece, with confidence, knowledge, and presence. The executives who had doubted him before were now forced to listen seriously, and the millionaire, once eager to mock, was beginning to reassess his assumptions. This was more than a lesson in leadership. It was a demonstration of courage, preparation, and the unexpected power of a young mind willing to stand tall even when laughed at. While the laughter and whispers from the boardroom continued to fade, the young boy remained calm, almost as if he carried a quiet strength that could not be shaken. Many of the executives were now curious, trying to understand where this unusual confidence had come from. How could someone so young stand in front of a room full of seasoned adults and command attention without fear? The answer, as it turned out, was rooted in a story that few in the room knew, a story of determination, struggle, and relentless preparation. Years before this moment, the boy had grown up in a neighborhood where opportunities were limited and expectations were low. Many people around him believed that children should be seen and not heard, that their ambitions should remain small and safe. But he was different. Even as a young child, he had a curious mind that never stopped asking questions, a hunger for knowledge that pushed him to read everything he could find, from business books to leadership manuals, even financial reports that most adults would find complicated. His parents, though not wealthy, had always encouraged him to dream, to learn, and to aim high. They had instilled in him the importance of preparation and the power of knowledge, teaching him that confidence without skill was meaningless. The boy had spent countless nights studying charts, memorizing corporate procedures, and learning how companies made decisions, while other children played outside or spent their evenings in video games. He was meticulously planning his path, understanding the world he hoped to be a part of. By the time he reached early adolescence, he had already demonstrated exceptional skill in managing projects and solving problems. Even adults around him were surprised by his capability, but many dismissed it as luck or coincidence. They could not imagine that someone so young could have the discipline, intelligence, and patience to truly lead. Yet, in his mind, leadership was not about age or size. It was about preparation, confidence, and the courage to act. He had learned early that people would doubt him, laugh at him, or try to dismiss him, but he had also learned that proof of competence would always silence the skeptics. When the opportunity arose to work with the company where the millionaire and the board were gathered, he had not hesitated. He saw it as a chance to put his skills to the test, to prove that knowledge and preparation could outweigh assumptions. From the very first day, he approached his role with professionalism, taking notes, learning the workflows, understanding the responsibilities, and quietly making decisions that improved team performance. His work was meticulous, effective, and undeniable, but outside appearances made it easy for others to overlook him. The board and the millionaire had never met someone like him before, a young boy who could step into a room and assert authority with such calm assurance. The boy's past experiences had prepared him for this exact moment. The ridicule, the laughter, and the initial skepticism were all familiar to him. He had faced doubt in his family, in school, and in his early projects, and each time he had responded with skill, composure, and proof of his ability. The room had now become another stage where he could demonstrate what he had been quietly building for years. Every detail he shared in that boardroom, every confident word he spoke, was a result of years of dedication, of learning in silence while others played or ignored him. He understood that authority could not be demanded, it had to be earned. And he had earned it through preparation, insight, and relentless practice. The boy was not simply reacting to the mockery. He was demonstrating the truth of his journey, showing that age, appearance, and initial impressions could never define competence or leadership. As the executives and the millionaire began to grasp the depth of his preparation, they could not help but feel a mix of astonishment and respect. The boy's backstory, though unspoken at first, was evident in every word, every gesture, every confident pause he made. It was a story of perseverance, intelligence, and courage, a story that reminded everyone that greatness can come from the most unexpected places, and that the loudest skeptics are often silenced not by argument, but by undeniable skill. After the boy had calmly outlined his responsibilities and impressed the room with his clarity and knowledge, a quiet tension settled over the boardroom. The laughter and mockery had faded, replaced by a mix of curiosity, disbelief, and something new, anticipation. Everyone could feel that the moment was about to shift, that what had begun as a scene of ridicule was slowly turning into a revelation. The millionaire, still seated at the head of the table, was unusually silent, his usual confidence tempered by an unfamiliar unease. He leaned forward, scrutinizing the boy's every gesture, trying to find a flaw, a hesitation, anything that would confirm his initial judgment. Then the board, who had been observing quietly until now, asked to review the organizational documents. The charts, the official schedules, and the management lists were laid out on the table. The executives began flipping through them, and a wave of murmurs spread as the reality became undeniable. The boy's name appeared in bold letters, marked clearly as a supervisor responsible for multiple projects and teams. Every detail he had mentioned aligned perfectly with the official records. The Proof was there, staring everyone in the face, and the room collectively realized that the boy had been telling the truth all along. The millionaire's expression changed subtly but noticeably, the smirk faded, replaced by a flash of disbelief, then tension. He had laughed at this boy, dismissed him as inexperienced, and now the undeniable truth challenged everything he had assumed. The boy had not just claimed authority, he had earned it, confirmed it, and proven it beyond question. The board members, who had initially been cautious, now looked at him with respect, nodding slightly as they acknowledged the weight of his role. One of the senior executives spoke up, his voice calm but firm. "It seems we have misjudged the situation. The responsibilities and projects assigned here are indeed under your supervision, as outlined in these documents." The room grew silent again as the realization sank in. The millionaire, usually quick to dominate every discussion, found himself momentarily speechless. The boy's quiet confidence and preparation had turned the tide, and the power dynamics in the room were shifting in real time. The boy, sensing the moment, did not gloat or show triumph. He simply remained calm, keeping his hands folded on the table, allowing the facts to speak for themselves. The executives were now fully attentive, some nodding in approval, others exchanging glances as if acknowledging the lesson that was unfolding before them. The boy had faced mockery, doubt, and disbelief. Yet he had responded not with anger or defensiveness but with preparation, clarity, and unshakable composure. The millionaire finally cleared his throat, attempting to regain some control. I did not realize this," he admitted, his voice tight with the weight of surprise and embarrassment. "It appears I underestimated you." The boy nodded politely, offering no words of revenge or triumph. His silence carried more weight than any statement could. It was a quiet affirmation of his capabilities, a demonstration that competence, confidence, and preparation always outweigh appearances or assumptions. For the executives, this turning point was a lesson in humility and awareness. They saw how quickly assumptions could be proven wrong, how a prepared mind could silence the loudest skeptics, and how courage and confidence could transform mockery into respect. The atmosphere in the boardroom had completely changed. The initial skepticism and laughter had been replaced by attentive observation, thoughtful nods, and a growing acknowledgement that they were witnessing something extraordinary. The boy's calm authority, the undeniable proof of his responsibilities, and the clear confirmation from the board had shifted the room. The turning point was not just about proving his title or authority, it was about demonstrating that knowledge, preparation, and courage could challenge stereotypes, assumptions, and even the expectations of the most powerful. The room now respected him, not just as a young boy, but as a leader, a supervisor, and someone whose abilities could not be dismissed. By the end of the review, the boy had fully established his position. The turning point had arrived, and there was no denying it. The millionaire, the board, and every executive in the room had witnessed a remarkable transformation, from mockery to recognition, from doubt to respect, and from assumption to undeniable truth. It was a moment that would be remembered by everyone present as the point where a young boy's preparation, courage, and knowledge overcame every obstacle and silenced every skeptic. The room had fallen into an unusual silence, the kind that follows a revelation too big to ignore. The initial laughter and ridicule were long gone, replaced by a mixture of awe, disbelief, and respect. All eyes were on the young boy, whose calm composure and precise knowledge had already begun to command the room, but there was still one final step before his authority could be fully recognized. The board needed to confirm it. The executives exchanged quiet glances, some nodding, some hesitant. As the documents were once again spread out on the table, official letters, charts, and organizational charts that clearly showed his name and responsibilities. The chairman of the board, a stern and experienced executive who rarely showed emotion, picked up the documents, scanning each page carefully. His eyes moved deliberately from one line to another, and the room watched him with bated breath. The boy stood silently, not flinching under the scrutiny, not showing impatience or anxiety. His small frame seemed to radiate a quiet confidence that demanded attention, and it was clear that the board could see his calm certainty as more proof of his role. Finally, the chairman spoke, his voice steady and commanding, yet tinged with surprise. "It appears the documents confirm what we have just witnessed. The responsibilities, the projects, and the supervision outlined here are indeed under your direction." A murmur of astonishment ran through the room. The millionaire's expression changed, the smirk fading completely, replaced by a mix of shock, respect, And the faintest hint of embarrassment, he had doubted the boy, mocked him, and yet here was the undeniable proof, right in front of him. One by one, the board members nodded, their expressions serious, affirming the young boy's position. A senior executive leaned forward, addressing the room. "We have no choice but to acknowledge the authority he holds. The responsibilities and decisions he manages are real, documented, and effective. We must respect the role he has been given." The room was now fully aware that this was not a child's claim, not a mistake, nor a prank. It was official, it was real, and it had been confirmed by the very people who once doubted him. The boy listened quietly, his face calm, but there was a subtle smile of satisfaction, not arrogance, but the quiet joy of someone whose abilities and preparation had finally been recognized. The room, once filled with laughter and mockery, now reflected a different energy, a mixture of admiration and humility. The millionaire, who had dominated the room with his confidence and wealth, now sat quietly, processing the shift in power, realizing that respect could not be demanded, it had to be earned, and the boy had earned it in full. Some executives whispered among themselves, remarking on how unusual this situation was. "I've never seen anything like this," one said softly, "a child, commanding attention, proving his authority, and now officially recognized. It's extraordinary." The boy's journey, from quiet preparation to this very moment, had come full circle, and the room seemed to recognize that they were witnessing history in a small but significant way. The chairman concluded, his voice firm and clear, "From this moment onward, the board confirms and acknowledges your authority as a supervisor. Your responsibilities, decisions, and oversight are valid and recognized. You are officially in charge of the projects and teams assigned to you." The boy nodded politely, acknowledging the confirmation. His journey had been one of persistence, preparation, and courage, and now, it had been officially recognized, validated, and respected. For the millionaire, this moment was humbling, a rare instance of being confronted with undeniable truth. The boy had turned skepticism into acknowledgement, ridicule into respect, and doubt into validation. The executives and board members, too, had learned a lesson, one they would not forget, about preparation, confidence, and the courage to assert oneself even when others doubt you. The confirmation was more than just a title or authority. It was a symbol, a demonstration that competence and preparation could outweigh age, appearance, or assumptions. The young boy had faced ridicule, defied expectations, and proven his worth, and now, with the board's acknowledgement, his role was undeniable, respected, and firmly established. The room, once skeptical, now celebrated a quiet victory of talent, courage, and perseverance, a lesson that would resonate long after the meeting ended. As the board formally confirmed the young boy's role as supervisor, the room seemed to exhale collectively, a mixture of awe, disbelief, and newfound respect hanging in the air. The laughter and mockery that had filled the room earlier were replaced with thoughtful silence, as every executive, including the millionaire, processed what they had just witnessed. It was a moment of reflection, one that forced them to question their assumptions, their judgments, and even their own understanding of leadership. Some executives leaned back in their chairs, nodding slowly, realizing the lessons unfolding before them. They had learned, in the most direct and undeniable way, that authority and competence were not determined by age, appearance, or background, but by preparation, knowledge, and confidence. The boy had demonstrated all of these qualities with quiet assurance, and the board's confirmation had solidified what had already been evident to those who were paying attention. The millionaire, once so quick to mock and dismiss, now wore a different expression, a mixture of humility and reluctant admiration. He realized that he had misjudged the boy, assuming that experience came only with age, money, or position, and now he had to confront the truth. Leadership could come from the most unexpected places. The executives who had doubted him nodded in agreement, acknowledging that intelligence, courage, and preparation could surpass appearances and assumptions. Whispers and soft conversations began to ripple through the room as the implications of the moment sank in. Some remarked on the boy's exceptional preparation, noting that he had anticipated every question and challenge, while others spoke of his poise and confidence, qualities rarely seen even in experienced adults. The story unfolding before them was not just about a young supervisor, but about the importance of merit, courage, and the willingness to assert oneself in the face of doubt. One senior executive, clearly impressed, said quietly, "This is a lesson we all need to remember. no matter how young, inexperienced, or different someone may appear, preparation and confidence speak louder than any stereotype or assumption. Others nodded, realizing that they had been guilty of underestimating him simply because of his age. The boy, listening quietly, did not seek to gloat or prove a point. He simply remained composed, letting the lesson speak for itself, demonstrating that true leadership is about action and competence, not about appearances. For the boy, this moment was not just about recognition or authority, it was about proving that persistence, courage, and preparation could overcome even the loudest doubts and the harshest skepticism. Every executive in the room, including the millionaire, had witnessed firsthand the power of these qualities. The reactions were varied but unified in one thing: respect. The skepticism that had once dominated the room was replaced with admiration, acknowledgement, and an understanding of the boy's extraordinary abilities. The board members, in particular, seemed deeply reflective. They recognized that they had been part of a rare lesson, one that would remain with them for years. The boy's journey from preparation to mockery to confirmation had provided a story of courage and skill that transcended age, background, and expectations. It was a real-life reminder that talent and determination cannot be ignored, and that true leadership is proven through action, results, and calm authority. Even the millionaire, who had once believed that experience alone conferred respect, seemed humbled by the experience. He had seen the boy handle challenges, answer questions, and assert his responsibilities with a confidence that few adults could match. The reactions around the room reflected the power of humility, acknowledgement, and the realization that greatness often comes from unexpected places. As the meeting ended, executives left the boardroom with a sense of inspiration, discussing the boy's skills, confidence, and the remarkable way he had turned ridicule into recognition. It was a moment that reminded everyone that leadership is not defined by age or stature, but by preparation, courage, and the ability to act decisively when it matters most. The lessons from this day would stay with them forever. And the boy had proven, in the most undeniable way, that respect is earned. Competence is undeniable, and true leaders can appear in the most surprising forms. As the meeting drew to a close, the energy in the boardroom had completely transformed. The executives who had once whispered and smirked now walked with thoughtful expressions, a mixture of admiration and reflection. The millionaire, who had been quick to mock and dismiss, now sat quietly, humbled by the undeniable truth he had witnessed. The young boy, still composed and calm, gathered his notebook, his subtle smile reflecting a quiet triumph, not of arrogance, but of validation, of having proven that preparation, courage, and confidence could overcome even the harshest doubts. The boy had not only earned the respect of the board and the millionaire but had also become a symbol, a living example of how determination and knowledge could challenge stereotypes, assumptions, and expectations. His journey had begun long before he stepped into this boardroom, filled with years of learning, preparation, and perseverance. Yet today, all of that effort had culminated in a single moment that would inspire everyone present, reminding them that true leadership is not inherited or assumed, but demonstrated. Executives began to reflect on their own biases and judgments, realizing how often they had underestimated others based on age, appearance, or background. They had laughed, they had doubted, and yet they had been proven wrong by someone younger, smaller, and seemingly less experienced. It was a humbling lesson, one that left a lasting impression. The boy's quiet confidence had spoken louder than any argument, louder than ridicule, and louder than the skepticism that had initially filled the room. The millionaire, who had been the most vocal skeptic, now approached the boy, extending his hand with genuine respect. "You have proven yourself today," he said, his voice calm but sincere. "I misjudged you, and I apologize. Your preparation and knowledge are remarkable, and I have nothing but respect for your work." The boy nodded politely, accepting the acknowledgement without boastfulness. His humility and composure only added to the respect he had earned, demonstrating that true leadership combines skill, confidence, and grace. Other executives followed suit, offering words of praise and congratulations. The room, once dominated by mockery and doubt, had transformed into a space of recognition and encouragement. It was a rare and unforgettable moment, a turning point that highlighted the importance of merit, persistence, and courage. The boy's story would not just remain in this room, it would travel far beyond, inspiring others to believe in themselves and their potential, regardless of the obstacles or skepticism they faced. As he left the boardroom, the boy carried not just a title or official recognition, but a story of triumph, courage, and the power of preparation. His journey had taught a room full of experienced executives that greatness is not determined by age, size, or appearance, but by skill, focus, and determination. It was a story that would stay with them forever. A reminder that every person has potential waiting to be recognized, and that even the loudest skeptics can be silenced by proof, humility, and competence. Outside the office, the world seemed unchanged, but for the boy, for the board, and for the millionaire, nothing would ever feel quite the same. They had witnessed a real-life example of perseverance, courage, and intelligence, and the lessons from this day would resonate for years. The boy had shown that leadership could emerge from the most unexpected places, that confidence could defy doubt, and that knowledge combined with preparation is an unstoppable force. The story of the young supervisor spread quickly, inspiring countless others. Parents, teachers, and executives shared the tale, highlighting the boy's courage and determination, and the lesson that skepticism and mockery are no match for preparation and self-belief. It became more than just a corporate story. It became a symbol of hope, empowerment, and the idea that anyone, regardless of age or background, can rise to leadership if they are ready to work, learn, and stand confidently in their abilities. In the end, the boy's triumph was quiet but powerful. A single statement, "I'm your supervisor," had challenged assumptions, silenced ridicule, and reshaped perceptions. The board's confirmation had cemented his authority, but the real victory was the lesson left with everyone in that room and beyond, a lesson in courage, preparation, humility, and the unwavering belief that greatness can come from the most unexpected places. And as he walked away, the boy's story left a lingering truth. Respect is earned, not given, and true leaders prove themselves through action, skill, and unwavering confidence.